Welcome to the Big Life Podcast. Neal Oates Jr., Robin Lewis. We are going to have a spirited conversation because we are continuing the acronym for Big Life, and we are now in I for intentional. Intentionality, living life on purpose, setting a daily course of action in line with your purpose. Robin, are you ready for this one, sir?
Yes, sir. I'm very ready for this one. I just had somebody ask me a question just a couple days ago that I'll share with you on this show. But yes, this is one of those areas, folks, that I haven't been the best at.
Hold on, wait. Robin, now this is where I want to remind everyone that not only are we the host, we are also practitioners and listeners of our own podcast. And so as you share and as I share in these episodes, we're working our way through the big life. We're trying to actually embody, refine, and implement these foundational principles, correct? So go ahead.
Yes, sir. Very good. And if I can say, I don't mean to embarrass Neil by saying this, but he's really good at this, in my observation. And so I'm going to share some things, and I asked Neil to share a little bit too because he does this consistently and he does this very well. But I'm going to jump in, Neil. Somebody asked me the other day if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to the 25-year-old Robin, and as we do this recording today, I'm 62 years old. And so if you had the opportunity to go talk to your 25-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would you say to them? And I told them a couple of things, but one of those is what we're talking about here, is that's about being intentional. I would say to my 25-year-old self to get clarity around what it is that you want in life, first of all. Get clarity around what is important to you, your values, and set meaningful goals based upon accomplishing that. And then be about that. Be intentional about going after on a consistent and persistent basis with what you want to do with your life. And so there are a couple of things that falls underneath that, but that's a reality that I'm sharing with you, that the benefit for me, Neil, is that I have been that in some areas of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen the benefit of that in my life. But then there are some areas where I haven't been the best at that. And as a result, I haven't achieved as much as I could have in those areas of my life. And so,
Now, I know that we both have notes, Robin, about intentional and intentionality and setting this daily course of action, but I want to just piggyback off of what you just mentioned about going back to your 25-year-old self.
yeah,
So, our audience is probably older than 25, right? They're probably looking back and like, man, I wish I could talk to my 25-year-old self. So, first, while we cannot do like Doc and Marty McFly and go back in time, what we can do is we can take advantage of the opportunity to pour into someone else that might be 25, right?
yes,
Someone else who might be younger than us. And we can share not only this episode, but we can share our experience. So I don't want you to miss Robin's statement there where he would tell his 25-year-old younger self. But here's what I also know. I know that when Robin engages with younger individuals, he's saying, hey, here's why we have this big life framework. Make sure you're intentional about the daily actions and this course. So that's number one. But then second, what I do want to ask you, and then we can just work through our notes. What if someone is listening to this and they have yet to reach their 25th birthday? Right? How do they? Because the world is telling us, well, no, you don't have to figure anything out right now. Just throw everything and let it figure out. Well, don't worry. Like, live for today. Carpe diem. Seize the day. Right? Go be wild and crazy, and you can figure out tomorrow, or the day after that. So, how do we balance? Right? Making sure that we have clear goals and then not being too regimented where we're not enjoying this journey while we're on it.
yeah. Well, enjoying the journey should be a part of the goal, right?
Right?
And but yeah, it's a great question. That what we're talking about today actually is for the 16-year-old, the 15-year-old, 14-year-old, even the 13-year-old, right? Wasn't there? I saw some post the other day where a 13-year-old was buying a Porsche for their parents. And so, yes, I don't know how young you can start with this, and it's for the 62-year-old still, right? Like me, and older, right? It's a truth that the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The next best time to plant that tree is today, right? So no matter where you are, I think these truths are true for everybody regarding making the most of your life. So the big life is living into your potential, right? And so there are some things. Let's talk about some of them. So what we're talking about here, and so what you could do as a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old and a 62-year-old is figure out your purpose. When we talk about being intentional, we're talking about figuring out your purpose. We believe, Neal and I believe, that you are here for a purpose. And we'll have shows that will talk specifically about that. But a very easy way, there's two clues that I would give you that you consider your purpose. And one is what are you passionate about? So figure out what moves you. What are you moved by? What are you passionate about? I heard somebody say, John Eldridge, I think it was, that shared, if you're watching movies and movies move you to tears, something about that, figure out what it is about that caused you to be moved. So what are you passionate about? And then the other thing is what are you good at? Those are clues that you and I have to try and figure out what our purpose is, right? So we're saying the first part about being intentional is figure out what your purpose is. The second part of that is to
Hold
clarify.
on. I want to park right there just from that first part, figuring out what your purpose is. You talk about passion and then what you're good at, what your skill set is. First, people will say, well, I'm passionate about this, but that can't be my purpose, right? Like just because I'm passionate about this thing, there's no avenue for me to utilize this to create this big life. And so what I know that what Robin and I sincerely believe that there is room for you and your passions. You might have to figure it out and say, well, here's how I can leverage this into something else. For instance, I love Thai food. And you're like, well, Neal, you're passionate about Thai food. I am passionate about Thai food. Now, I'm not out making it and opening up a restaurant, but what my passion for Thai food did was it got me engrossed in the Thai culture, which opened up an entire new segment for my real estate business where I am working with an unusual number of individuals from Thailand. Right. And so that's where we start figuring out what we're passionate about and how can we create opportunities. But Robin, the one that I really just mentioned it, talking about what you're good at. We are the worst type of creative beings because we would say, well, I'm not good at anything. Or if we are good at something, we will discount it because, but it's nothing. That's easy. And so, would you just pause there on that? What are we good at for a moment and just go a little bit deeper? Because oftentimes, what we're good at, we don't see the value in. It takes someone else from the outside to see that. So, would you just go a little bit further into that? What are we good at? Because that might dive or that might give some ideas about what our purpose is.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there are assessments that you can take first of all. That I encourage that to help you to kind of discover what your strengths are. But even without the assessments, what I would encourage our listeners to do is to just think back around times where you might be doing something with a group in some way, shape, or form. It could be it could have been in school with a school project, or it could have been an event that you were helping to put on, or it could have been whatever. You're playing an instrument, or you're participating in some sort of event or something. There, look back at your life and figure out those times where you were doing something that you were really good at and you enjoyed doing it. And you can think of it in terms of maybe sometimes time just kind of flies by when you're doing it. If we really stop to take a look at times when we're doing things that we are good at it, others acknowledge it. Man, you're really good at that. And we feel that way. We feel strengthened when we're doing it. Time flies by when we're doing it. Those are clues to what we're good at. You also can very easily ask those who know you, those who are close to you, those who
Yeah.
are around you, who see you on a regular basis. And I know sometimes we don't look at that. I wasn't the best at that for my daughter, Neal. Looking back now as a parent, that's one. I just said it, by the way, to my daughter and son-in-law, because they just had their first child. And I said it to them, that one of the things that we can do as parents is to really try to hone in on what our child's strengths are. And so, yeah, maybe sometimes there are people around you that they might not be looking for it too. So you want to specifically ask those who really can give you input in terms of, what are you really good at? If I come from the premise that we're all good at something, what would you say I am good at?
Hmm.
So yeah, hey, Neal, it's not something that they might figure out just on this show today, but the point is of today is that you look at these things, and it might take you a while. It took me a while to really figure out my purpose, but two things you can really start to examine to help you to get there is what you're passionate about and what your strengths are, what you're good at.
And so I know you mentioned that there are some assessments. I am not going to miss this opportunity to encourage everyone something that we believe in, the DISC assessment, the DISC assessment. I believe that once you get information and you start knowing who you are and how you're wired and what some of your natural tendencies might be, I believe that's always going to be a benefit. And the beauty is that they don't have to go anywhere other than right here with Robin to get that DISC assessment. Now, I know that you would never, boast yourself or put yourself out there, but if you all are interested in getting a DISC assessment, make sure that you put the comment, just put DISC in the comments to this episode wherever you're watching it, and we will make sure that we get you connected so that you can figure out, or so that you can take that DISC assessment, so that maybe you'll be closer to figuring out what you're passionate about and what you are good or skilled at. So Robin, thank you for that, sir. Go
Yes,
ahead,
sir.
continue. We're all
Yes.
ears.
Thank you. So there's tools to help you with that. That's the point. The other one is to clarify your values, like what's important to you. And we if we don't clarify them. So the point is of being intentional is really being intentional about the life that we want to live, the goals that we want to achieve, and those goals should be affiliated, have something to do with you achieving your purpose and living out your values, right? And so get clarity around your vision. One of the things that Neal and I will talk to you about living a life of intention is deciding what it is that you want to achieve. And I know most of our listeners already have that type of thing, but we're talking the framework here, and we want to encourage you. The times that you're going to be most effective is when you have a clear vision that you're working towards, right? So get clarity
Mhm.
around your vision, what it is that you want to achieve a year from now, right? If you had your way, like when this show is airing, it's the beginning of the year, right? We're ending a year and beginning a new year. It's a great time for you to consider, what do you want to accomplish for 2025, right? And write that down. Get some clarity around that. Because there's a quote that I heard. I wrote it down for you folks. So I want to share this quote for you. It's a John Maxwell quote. It says, if you don't try to create the future you want, you must endure the future you get. If you don't try to create the future you want, you must endure the future you get. And unfortunately, that's what happens. If we're not trying to create the future that we want, we kind of just get whatever. And so that's what we're talking about by intentional. And so set meaningful goals. I want to talk about that a little bit because this is the part where I haven't done as good, Neal. And I want to set a framework for that. And this is where I think you have done well. So after I share here, please share your insight. But set meaningful goals. So it starts with goals that line up with your purpose, your values, your vision, right? So set goals that will put you in the direction of achieving those things, in living out your purpose and living out your values and achieving the vision that you have for 2025. For example, set goals that line up with that. And then have measurable milestones along the way. So you're going to have measurable, so the goals should be measurable, first of all, and then have milestones that as you achieve them, you celebrate them. Because surveys have shown that we are people who celebrate the small wins have a much higher chance of actually accomplishing their goals, the bigger win. And so set milestones for those goals and then be accountable. And this is where Neal, like, I in my friendship with Neal over the years, if he's about to do something, there's something in his life that he wants to accomplish. One of the first things he does, he says, Robin, here's what I'm going to do, and here's when I'm going to do it. And I want you to hold me accountable to it. And I can't tell you the importance of having an accountability partner, because it's very easy for us to get distracted, to fall off the train, to not follow through with what it is that we want to have. The last part that I will share about that before I turn it over to you, Neal, is to review and reflect. So it's a great opportunity where we are right now to reflect on 2024, view 2024, if you haven't already, and reflect on maybe whatever it is that you did set out to accomplish for 2024, right? What were you hoping to achieve in 2024? And then review that and reflect on that. Maybe you achieved it, celebrate that. Maybe you did not achieve it. Consider why that is and what you can do differently as you move into the 2025, the new year, right? So set goals that are lined up with your purpose and your vision. Have measurable milestones and celebrate the wins along the way. And hold yourself accountable, make yourself accountable to somebody else in your life. And that's where a mentor or a coach can come in as well. And then review and reflect on how you're doing on a regular basis. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about living intentional. And sir, I'm not saying this, folks that are listening to me, I'm not saying this about Neal to just to make Neal look good to you or to make Neal look good to himself. I'm sharing this about Neal because this is who Neal is. And so, sir, please, you need to share your vantage point in this. We need to
Okay,
learn.
so this is one that I get excited about because I believe that one of my greatest superpowers is intentionality, right? The fact that I have a clear goal and then that I am decisive in my daily actions. And here's what I found, that when I take consistent daily actions, even if I'm doing the wrong thing, I find out that it's the wrong thing much sooner than someone who is haphazardly going through life. So there have been some things that I have been clear about. I've gone after them with intentionality and I've failed, but I failed in 3 days as opposed to taking 3 to 6 months to find out that it wasn't going to work. And so there was a word. So you mentioned vision, but then you went back to values. And I don't want our audience to miss the importance of values. So I'm just going to talk about my life. I have four values that I run everything through. I call them my pillars of success. And this is for my personal, for relationships, for business, for my health. And those four pillars are excellence, service, leadership, and growth. And so much so that I have them here, like my pillars of success, excellence, service, leadership, and growth. But then everything that you talked about when being intentional, so this is my real estate, my business, what we call our sales predictability triangle. You talked about having that vision, that goal. So I know I have our financial goal right up there. I have our core values here that are important to not only myself, but my agents as well. And then we mentioned those behaviors that are going to be required. The measurable part that you talked about It's our metrics. I know that in real estate, my prospecting hours, my number of appointments, my signed agreements, and the number of pending sales, if I am consistent in hitting those metrics, and then as you mentioned, Robin, being held accountable, I just have found there's nothing like public accountability. In my real estate business, we put all of our agents' numbers on a big board, not for shame or for accolades, but for accountability, so that everyone knows how everyone else is performing. You mentioned something, Robin, and you gave me kudos for sharing with you and what I call my foundation or my dirty dozen about the goals that I'm trying to accomplish and what my action steps are with a deadline on them. It is not because I am that great. It's because I am that bad. It's because I know that Neal will lie to himself. It's because I know that Neal will let himself off the hook. I will do for Robin, I will do for Fremo or for Sachs what I won't do for myself. I will make sure, like, there was a time when I didn't tell you about a deadline for the Affluent Negroes book. And since I didn't tell you about the deadline, that deadline came and went. When I said the only difference, Robin, this has to be done a week from today, all of the words, everything submitted. I got done a day early. Why? Because I did not want to let Robin down. And all that goes back to intentionality. And I believe that if we will take, well, here's what I do want to pause and say. In the Big Life Framework, intentional, it says set a daily course of action in line with your purpose. That word daily, I believe, is the key. It's not a grand act. It's not some intentional action that we have to plan for 6 years from now. Ooh, in 2030, here's what I'm going to do. And that's going to result in me hitting it or having this big life. It's those daily decisions. What time we wake up. Are we going to spend quiet time reflecting on a daily basis, right? Are we going to eat the right thing? Are we going to exercise? Are we going to tell our significant other that we love them and appreciate them? Are we going to take time to listen to our kids or our colleagues and employees? Those daily actions, if we are intentional and disciplined in those, if we hold ourselves accountable to those daily actions, we will look up 6 weeks from now, we'll look up 3 months and a year from now and say, hey, I've done pretty good. I didn't realize that I had achieved as much as I have achieved. Now I must be intentional about celebrating those victories. And so I get excited about this because the intentional part of my life has helped me outperform individuals who were smarter than me, who had better pedigree, who had better relationships, who probably were more skilled and talented, but because I was intentional, first of all, about being intentional. And that's a choice, right? Do I want to do the hard but necessary? If that answer is yes, and if you commit to doing the hard but necessary intentional work, then you will find the right people. You'll put the right processes and systems in place. You will have the checks and the balances. And so I just believe all of that. So thank you for sharing and thank you for the kudos because here's what it
So,
means now. It means that
Neal,
any of our listeners and the audience that sees me and they're like, Neal, what are your plans for tomorrow? I better know what my plans for tomorrow are. Right? It's one reason why I am adamant about using a calendar and time blocking and making sure that I box and shelf all of my activities. It's why I am a slave to my calendar, but I get to choose who is going to be the master, and that's going to be me because I'm putting things on the calendar. So, all good stuff there. And it's something that I believe once you embrace intentionality in your life, I think is going to just maximize the results and the impact that you're going to be able to have.
well said. Well, sir. Well said. That's gold. So, and you're living it. So you're not just talking it, you're living it. I have a question for you because as I hear you, one of the things that jumps out at me is what we started with is that it's intentionality starts with clarity. It's
Mm-hmm.
clarity about what we want. It's clarity about our purpose, our vision, our values. Sir, where did that clarity come from for you? Because I think that's one of the reasons why you are so intentional. It's because you have a clarity about what it is that you're trying to achieve and do and be in your life.
So the first place it came, I was blessed to have amazing parents. One who said, dream big and then dream bigger. Right. And so I think just being encouraged, having people who were there in my life. So my parents were my first mentors. And so they were fantastic at saying, okay, what do you want? And I would say, well, here's what I want. And then they said, okay, how are you going to achieve it? And then by what deadline are you going to do the little steps to achieve? So that's where it started, just by having a mom and dad in my life who allowed me to dream, turn those dreams into goals, turn the goals into action items with deadlines, right? So that's where it started. But then after that, it was really that the drive for having clarity and goals came from me really knowing who I am and what I'm good at, right? When I know who I am and what I'm good at, there are a lot of things. Well, let me say this. The reason I'm so clear about what I want out of life is because I know what I don't want out of life. I know that I don't want to endure the future that someone else gives me, right? I don't, and this is nothing against individuals who have a full-time job. I know that my personality, so when we look at the DISC assessment, I am not wired to work for someone. It's just not who I am. It's not my gifting. I'm a dreamer. So for me sitting and just do like that's not who I am. So once I figured out who I was and got very clear on what I did not want, I know that my highest, even so, my four values, excellence, service, leadership, and growth, those values are built on the foundation of freedom. And whatever that freedom means to you, I have my own definition of freedom. Freedom for me means that my wife and I get to do what we want, when we want, with who we want, for as long as we want. And so that's where the only way for us to reach that is for us to have excellent service, leadership, and growth. And that's why I make decisions on what I don't want. And then when you know what your no's are, your yeses become very clear. So I know it was a long answer. Mom and dad first, getting very clear on who I am, what I enjoyed, what my passions and skill sets were, and then figuring out what I didn't want in life. After I analyzed all of that, that helped me figure out what I do want, and that's why I'm so passionate about my yeses in life.
Right on. And sir, as we that's very good. Very good stuff. And so folks, what we're talking about here when we talk about being intentional is getting clarity around what you want. So what do you want in 2025? What do you want to accomplish this year? And then set goals around that, right? Set the goals that have milestones that you can measure and celebrate the small wins. Get somebody in your life that can hold you accountable, and then review and reflect on how you're doing on a regular basis, because we really do get to choose and live out by what we do every day, the life that we're creating. We really do get to choose what 2025, December 2025 is going to look like. It will be
Now,
based
so
on
so so
our
Robin,
daily.
I want to interrupt you right there because you just made a statement, and I don't want anyone to miss it. You just mentioned that we get to decide what December 2025 looks like before it's even on the calendar, before we even experience it. We get to decide today what our future is going to be. And I know that the easy place for Robin and Neal to be is, well, it's not our fault. It's the administration, it's our clients, our customers, our wives, our kids, right? They're the reason why we are here. But I know that what you just mentioned, that we get to decide what our life looks like. We get to drive this ship. We get to choose the course of our lives. I think that's so important. And I appreciate you for reminding us of that.
Right on. And sir, when I think about it, one of the things that I think about that I maybe didn't do so well also is that it means reducing. It means letting go of some things too. In order for us to be consistently doing things on a daily basis that's going to help us to meet the goal, then it means that we can't do everything, right? So there are some things that we need to let go. So that's a part of it. I think we need to mention is reduce some of the things that you're doing. If I were to tell my 25-year-old Robin, I would say, don't try to do all of that. Let go of some of that. Focus so you can really take advantage of the compounding effect that Neal just talked about. There is a magic to doing something every day. There is a magic. towards moving you in your direction. And I just want to share something that I learned with John. I'm going to try, help me, Neal, to keep this to like.
Hold on, Robin. Hold on. I love the fact that you just say John like everyone knows who John is. You've got to remember that when you can't just call him first on the first name basis, sir, because they're gonna be like, "Who is this John that Robin keep talking about?" Go
So
ahead, come on,
I'm,
brother.
I'm referring to Dr. John C. Maxwell. He's probably he's not probably, he's the most popular leadership and management expert in the world. He's authored 100 books. He's sold over 26 million copies. His books have been translated into 50 different languages. He's recognized by Mother Teresa. He's received the Mother Teresa Prize for Global Peace. He's been inducted or has membership in the Horatio Alger Award. Yeah, the John Maxwell. And thank you for that. You know, he shared something, and he says he uses the illustration that if somebody wants to go and cut down a tree, that all they have to do is they have an axe, first of all, and they can go out to that tree in their front yard and they can swing the axe at the tree, and they could be done with it that day and then go about their business. And then the next day they come back and they pick up that axe and they make a swing at that tree. And they put down that axe and go about their business. And then the next day they come and they swing that axe one time. And if that person goes out and he swings that axe every day, eventually what's going to happen is that that tree is going to fall. And so he said he used that illustration to say, what if that person just went out and swung the axe 5 times? And so he came from this with his rule of 5. So he goes out and swings the axe 5 times and then stops and come back the next day. But he goes and swings 5 times every day, day after day after day. That tree is going to fall, and it's going to fall promptly. And so as we talk about intentional now, he shared something about the rule of 5. So that's the rule of 5, where you go out and you swing the axe 5 times. The rule of 5 for success. And it kind of summarizes, I think, what Neal and I have been talking about today. So one, he says the first rule is in terms of, so these are the 5 essentials, that if we do these 5 things, we're going to achieve success. One is to know what you want. We talked about that, right? So, but really, what do you want? That's what Neal and I would challenge you with. That's what I respect about Neal, is that he has a clarity about that. And it's not just a clarity, but he is about that. He is wanting to make that happen. And so you have to first know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So we're encouraging you here to give that consideration. That's what John Maxwell was saying. Like George Bernard Shaw said, life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. So you're creating yourself. The second thing is that you have to have the right tools. We talked about some tools today, but in this case, the person had an axe, right? If he went out there with a knife or, some little thing, it's probably going to take a whole lot longer, right? And it probably will wear out before it actually cuts down the tree. And so, what is it? What are the tools that you need in order to accomplish your goals? You have to have the right tools, right? And what Neal and I would add to that is that you have to improve yourself. You have to grow. You have to become that person that's capable of achieving what it is that you want. And so you have to have the right tools. Now, the third thing is that you have to focus. So the idea with this guy with the axe is that he had to go out every day. Neal talked about it every day. He took the axe and he went out there and he swung 5 times. And so what happens by swinging that 5 times every day, what you're doing is you're taking advantage of the compounding effect. And so every day you have to be consistent. You have to be and said 2 things there. First of all, the first one is consistent. You have to go every day, right? And that's the consistency component. But you also have to have focus. And the focus there is that you're going out to the same tree. Sometimes what Robin did is I was trying to cut down too many trees, man. And so the
Mm-hmm.
point is we have to focus and go out there and swing at the same tree. Can you imagine if I'm swinging at a whole bunch of different trees? Maybe none of them actually fall.
Yeah.
And so we have to swing, we have to focus on the same tree. And then the fifth thing he said is that you have to stay with the task. And that's the idea of staying with it until you have accomplished it. A lot of times when I look back at my life, a lot of times I have stopped before actually completing something. I tell you, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, Neal had shared with me that he had a goal to make. And it was, okay, folks, I'm not making this up. It was the last day for which he had to make the goal. And he didn't make the goal at that point. And I was starting to try to console him and say, hey, it's all right, man. You know, the part of goal setting is you kind of choose a date that you think you're going to make it by, but oftentimes you might not make it until after that date. It's okay. And I'm trying to console him. And you know what? He stopped me in my tracks and told me, hey, Robin, wait. The day is not over yet. I still have a few hours left in this day. And that is the part of intentionality that we're talking about, is that you're not going to stop until the task is accomplished. And I'm going to shut up now, Neal, because I want you to bring us home.
Not so, and ladies and gentlemen, here's what I want to encourage you all with. As we're talking about being intentional and this whole idea of setting a daily course of action in line with your purpose, know that you're not alone. You all are here listening to Robin and I, two friends, two men, business owners, husbands, fathers, have conversation. Right. But what we want to tell you is that find someone to do life with so that when maybe your drive starts to wane just a little bit, maybe the motivation is not there, that you can have someone that you can lean on that's going to remind you of why intentionality is so important. Robin and I both mentioned the idea of having someone to hold you accountable, because we know we will let ourselves off the hook. So I want to remind you of that. And we're going to ask for some intentional action on your part right now. And that is to go into the comments wherever you're listening to this episode and leave a comment. Let us know if you're really strong at being intentional, or maybe what some of your challenges are. If you've hung out with us this long on this episode, you are the caliber of person that we want and need to hear from. Why? Because we are intentional about getting better, about bringing you what it is that you need and want, so that we can help you as we help ourselves. And then the second intentional act that we're going to ask you to do is to not only subscribe, but share this with someone that might need to hear the message that Robin and I shared on this episode. We know that we are the results of people who intentionally sought out us, who came to us and said, hey, I believe you can. I believe you have a little more in you. I believe that you are not only passionate, but skilled in some areas that maybe we couldn't even see. And we're asking you to do that for someone else. And then, as always, we want to remind you that we love you, God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time you see us or we see you, we're right there with you. Take care.